Okay, good morning everyone. It is Black Friday and I am boycotting going out and spending whole bunches of money on stuff right now. And plus I don't want to get rear-ended in a parking lot. My name is Trinette Hackett and this is Stomping on Eggshells. And I don't expect a lot of people to be listening live right now because it is right after a holiday and it's a big shopping day. But I promised myself that I was not going to quit this. So here we go. We're going to try to be starting a timeline here, which I'm not going to get all of it in one go.
Time out.
What happened?
Time out. You have your recording feeding back live.
I am? I don't understand.
Either that or I do.
Okay, I don't hear it going back to me.
Okay. Go ahead and continue on. It must be on my side.
Okay, I can try that. Basically, it's going to be starting from about 4.5 to 5 years old and eventually ending where I am now at 34. This part I'm going to try to convey is going to be until about right before I told my mom, so until about 12 years old, almost 13. One of the things that I know that people always wonder, and they don't mean it horribly sometimes, is they want to ask, why didn't you say something? You know, maybe not, you weren't strong enough to stop them or whatever, but why didn't you say something? And in some cases, the child is threatened. I was not threatened, but there are plenty of people that have iterated memories of people saying, I'm going to kill your family. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill your mom. I'm going to kill someone you love. And that is very powerful coming from an adult to a child because you believe they can do it. They can ground you. They can take away your toys. They can take away your television. You know, they make you eat Brussels sprouts. They have the power to do this. Because as a child, you're taught that grown-ups are doing what's best for you. So even if it is a punishment, it's something that there is no escape from. Also, I grew up in the 80s, so that was still a point. No, there's my cat. There was still a point where any grown-up could scold you or take you to task or even spank you if you were acting like an idiot in public. And if your parents found out, then you got in trouble again because someone else had to parent you. So especially if you grew up before the 90s, you learn very quickly any grown-up can get you in trouble. And it didn't matter who they were. If they were there over the age of 18, then they could yell at you. And my parents were very protective. My whole family was very protective. And, the whole stranger danger that we all joke about, they really impressed that upon me, not to go running off and not to talk to strangers. But the problem is with most child molestation, I always figured as a kid, unless it was a guy in a ski mask running up and like molesting me really quick, then, I figured that was what's going to happen. So if it comes from a family member, it's very confusing because it is drilled into you that these are the people that protect you. These are the people, if you have a problem, you go to them. And if they are the problem, you don't know who to turn to. You have no idea who to turn to. These are people that say they love you. They do give you good advice sometimes. And when this sort of thing happens, you don't know what box to put it in as a kid. They can't be bad. They're your family member. It's my dad. It's my brother, whatever. And so you're trying to answer these questions yourself. And everyone, if you've ever been hurt by something, you're always going, why? Why is it happening? Why is it me? Is it my fault? Is it their fault? Whose fault is it? Who's wrong here? And as a kid, you realize like someone needs to apologize when someone's hurt or something bad happens. Someone's supposed to apologize. That's why we told on kids in the playground, so they would be forced to apologize in front of another grown-up. And that made us feel better. It didn't fix everything, but it made us feel better. And in cases like this, the adult doesn't apologize. They don't want to admit what they're doing is wrong. So going into this, there were some magazines and pictures and such about that I would find. I don't know if he was just really horrible at hiding them, or if he meant for me to find them. There were several times he explained the stories to me. So I think that he meant to. And if you read a little bit about the subject, you find out this is cultivation. You make the child feel special, that they get things that no one else does. You spend time with them, you praise them, and you educate them on these grown-up activities. And so in the very beginning, you kind of feel like you're part of a special club because you're a kid and you get to look at and talk about these things that you kind of know you're not supposed to talk about. So it makes you feel very special and wonderful. But I got in trouble in kindergarten once. I was trying to draw with my stick figures this one story that I remember my dad explained to me because I didn't understand the story. And it was this man loved a woman, but she didn't love him. So he took her home and made her love him. And she did. Now I realized that he was a creepy stalker and kidnapped her and took her down to this like dungeon basement and did things to her. But I was drawing this out on a chalk easel in kindergarten, and a couple girls were watching and giggling. And it was this woman, stick figure woman with boobs, and this guy was tying her up to a wall and hooking things to her. And I just want to say that I don't care how smart you are at 5, it never occurs to you to draw this unless you have seen it or read it. That doesn't pop into your head. And that I got in a lot of trouble for that. And back then, they didn't know how to handle it. They told me to stop, they got the kids away. And even though she told me not to touch it, I erased everything. I knew that I shouldn't be drawing this, that no one should see this. This was a special private thing. And I was trying to see if everyone else knew about it. And the other girls didn't know. But she threatened to call my mom. She threatened to tell them, and I promised I would never do it again. And then it became something where, it's like, okay, well, you cannot draw with the easel back to the rest of the room again. It always has to be facing. Nowadays, they'd probably call the cops. But this is early 80s. They didn't know how to handle this, and they thought it was very odd. The first time that I walked into my dad in the bathroom, the door was open, and he was going to the restroom. And I remember being surprised that the door wasn't shut, and my mom was gone. And I think my brother was gone too. And instead of shooing me out like most grown-ups do, because I was like 4.5 or 5, so old enough to realize that I'm just going to toddle in there, he invited me in. And you stare. You're a kid, you're a girl, and you don't have one of those, so you stare. And he told me that I could touch it. He told me, and so I remember the cracked linoleum, and I remember kneeling and thinking how weird it felt. And he just stared at me the whole time with this blank look. And then he told me that if you love someone, you kiss them everywhere. And I gave it a peck. I didn't really know what to do. And after a few minutes of just this awkwardness, he grabs his newspaper up and tells me to get out. And I remember wanting to cry because it's like I didn't know what I did wrong. I don't think I hurt him. He told me I could. Why am I being sent away like I've done something wrong? And, at that age, you already know you don't stare at people. You don't try to see people when they're naked and dressing. You don't walk into people in the bathroom. It's all about privacy. And I was invited to break that privacy with him. But I was afraid to tell anyone else because a part of me realized you shouldn't be doing this. But I felt like I was allowed when no one else was, kind of like getting a cookie before dinner. Like if you go out on a car trip and you guys get ice cream and you don't bring any home for the rest of the family, it's like this clandestine, exciting, confusing thing. And he never explained that. And I remember just going to my room and huddling up and wondering, did I do something wrong? And that became a recurring feeling as the sexual abuse progressed, is that maybe he's angry and stomping out or sending me away because I did it wrong. And I had this weird idea that if I learned how to do it right, maybe it would stop. Maybe he would leave me alone. Maybe he wouldn't be angry anymore. And it was very, I keep saying the word confusing. It was extremely confusing because I realized this was a grown-up thing. And a part of me, I didn't want to be excluded from like what I felt was like this secret special club time. And another part of me was absolutely terrified because I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand why he would start acting funny and why he'd want me to touch that, or why he'd want to touch me places. And one of the things that made it harder as I was growing up was my brother. You ever had an older brother? They're great. He would get really bored, and he never did anything wrong to me, but he would get really bored and he would torment me. And he was very good about doing it, because the minute I would run screaming to my parents, he would just be like, God, make her shut up. She's bugging me. So I became known as this over-exaggerating, melodramatic dingbat. And every time he would, one time he convinced me for 2 weeks that I was retarded, not adopted, retarded. He had said that all my friends were paid by my parents to be my friends, so I'd have them. I went to a gate school, but he's just like, yeah, it's a special school and your teachers know. And when your mom gets mad, she talks really slowly to you. And if you've ever been a parent, you realize when you talk slowly so you don't kill them. And I went to go ask my mom, and she said, of course, it's not true. And he's like, yeah, that's what she'd say, because she doesn't want you to worry about it. And so I was a complete lunatic for 2 weeks. I was rude to my friends. I was going into everyone's desks because I was trying to figure out if they were, doing the same work I was doing. I was a complete idiot at home, and I was rude and mean to everyone. And finally, I just said, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be retarded. And my mom said, Rick, did you actually tell your sister she was retarded? And he was just like, yeah, And so it just became this thing of every time I would get out of sync with everything, people assumed, oh, they're just brothers and sisters messing with each other, or this is just little girls are dramatic. And, they are, they are over dramatic, and they are just goofy. And if something little happens, yeah, they do cry, But it became kind of understood that I was borderline a liar. And as I got more and more entrenched in this, I did start lying a lot. And it became a point where if I told you the sky was blue, you better run outside to check. That is something where the family started to realize that about half of what came out of my mouth was either an exaggeration or a 180-degree lie. Because I couldn't exactly tell what was real or not. And this was someone, my father, he would spend time and we would watch cartoons together. We both ate donuts. We would have some fun times. And there were times that the advice he gave me was very, very good. And he was the parent at that point. And then when no one else was around, not every time, okay, but when no one else was around, these times would happen, and I would be scared and hurt, and eventually it became physically painful and scary. But I didn't know who to talk to, because you're supposed to be able to talk to your parents. And my mom was in the process of trying to leave. She was processing and everything, trying to work up the nerve to get a divorce. I didn't know this. I just know that for days or a week at a time, she would be gone. And she'd go to her aunts, she'd go to her friends, my aunts rather, or her friends. And so I'd know that there'd be days when it would just be my dad. And my brother would go off to friends' houses, and he'd go play. And it was harder for me to get permission. It was much harder for that to happen. And it just became something where if I'd be alone in the house, I'd start to get really, really nervous. And this is when I started, we had plenty of food in the house. I'd start to steal food and to eat it somewhere else. Every time I stole some kind of food and ate it, I would feel this small triumph, like I won. Or I would steal my mom's clothes and cut them up and shred them, and I feel like I won. I wanted to win once against the grown-ups, any grown-up, because, in a kid's eyes, they're all working together. So, even to a point where I would buy all these salt licks from the feed store, and I would steal bouillon cubes, and one time this big canister of salt. And it got to a point I was eating about a cup of salt a week away from food, because every time I took some in my mouth, it was this sharp, overpowering, salty taste. And I knew I wasn't supposed to be doing it, and I felt good. It felt really good to be able to just do something I wasn't supposed to do. And I began just not wanting to be clean. I would pee in my pants. I would do all these things because I couldn't figure out why I was being punished, and why these weird things would happen, and I never would know when they would happen, except that no one would be in the house. And that was very, very scary. I didn't want to tell anybody, because back then, if you complained, I got spanked, I got grounded, the grown-ups would be like, well, you should have been, and stop whining about it. If you did something wrong, then you get punished. And then if you ever tried to cover your butt while being spanked, heck, spanking's going to get worse. I couldn't imagine what would be worse. What could be worse? Would more people join in? Would it be longer? Would he start telling people that he did this and everyone would see that I was bad? Everyone. I was so frantic that anyone would know that I was so bad that I got this level of punishment. And I used to stare at my friends or at other kids in the class, and I thought, maybe I can see. Because when this happens, you think that something's stamped on you, just red letters that everyone can tell that you're wrong and that you're gross and you're really messed up, And I would stare at them, and I'd get in trouble for, instead of studying, I'd be staring at everybody. And I came to a conclusion that either I was the only one that was this awful of a kid, or if I wasn't, then it's just something you don't complain about. You don't talk about it. And I had a lot of good friends in elementary school, and I remember wanting to ask them, does your dad do this? Because they only talked about getting spanked or grounded, or TV taken away or extra chores. They never talked about this. And I thought, if I tell you, will you not be my friend anymore? If you tell your parents and they tell my parents and then I get in trouble for complaining, maybe you won't be allowed to be my friend anymore. And that, I was really afraid of losing people, and I was afraid of people thinking that I was bad. I couldn't tell anyone, so I just started acting out at home and lying and taking things and stuffing things in weird places, I can't just throw the laundry away. No, I had to stuff it in one part of the linen closet. And then when my mom found it, she's like, why are you putting your dirty clothes in here? She didn't understand. And at one point, I remember thinking, because we had just watched Dune, okay, which is a very surreal movie if you're a kid. And there's one part where that little girl, Paul's sister, pokes the Baron with this little needle thing on her finger. And he flew around and died. And I thought, okay, well, if I poke him in his fat stomach, maybe he'll die and it'll stop. And I found a steak knife. We had a cheap set of steak knives, and I didn't want to take the Mac knives because she used them all the time. They were really good cutlery. So I found a steak knife, and I remember hiding it in my pillow thinking, the next time this happens, I am going to poke him really hard. And then he'll deflate or something. I don't know what was going to happen, and it'll stop. And my mom was making me clean my room, and I was throwing a fit about cleaning my room because I wanted it to be disgusting, and I wanted it to be messy, and I wanted it to be hard to find things, because maybe it'd be hard to find me, even though I was in the bed. And she was helping me, and I was flinging my pillow around, and the steak knife goes flying. Well, like any parent, she got mad that 1, I stole something, and 2, I had a knife in my room. I was like 9 years old. What 9-year-old needs a steak knife in the room? And so she took it, and I knew, because she was a good mom, she'd be making sure I didn't steal it again. And I was so angry because I thought, there's my chance. There's my chance. I could have won. So I started stealing more food, and doing weirder things like that. I know that there was one belt. Anyone from the 70s, 80s remembers this. It's you feed the belt through, and there was a slide lock. And as a kid, it was a horrible belt, because if you didn't get to the bathroom soon enough, you could pee on yourself just trying to get out of this belt. And I remember I wore it to bed, and I had my jeans on, and I had my belt on me. And when he came in, he tried to take off the belt, and it didn't work. And he waited a few minutes, and he tried again, and I was pretending to be asleep. And there are times you hate yourself for being a coward and just pretending that you weren't there. But that's what you do to survive. And he tried again, and he couldn't quite get it, and I wasn't going to help him. And so he left, and I thought, I've got it. This is it. This awesome, ugly belt is going to be my salvation. And I figured I was going to keep it all the time, and I was going to wear it every night, no matter what. I would always have pants on, and I would lock myself up, and I've won. It's going to stop. And I came back from school the next day, and I remember looking for it after a while, and it was gone. And it's nothing my brother would have taken, and my mom wouldn't have taken a belt from me. So, 3 guesses who took the belt. I scoured that room looking for it. And that was another thing that I thought that I could get out with, and it was just gone. And it was right around that point, I still was very religious. I started praying. It's like, I will take any punishment. I will be grounded for the rest of my life. I can be an old woman and still be grounded and not allowed to watch TV. I will eat every carrot put on my plate. I will do all the chores, even though I hate them, if just this would stop. And it didn't. So then, after a while, it was just like, okay, God, if you won't stop it, I want you to kill me. I want you to kill me. I'm tired of being the freak at school. I'm tired of being terrified all the time. You're supposed to feel safe in your own room. You're supposed to not wonder which day your dad's going to flip. And he's going to come into your room and look at you with these dead eyes that you can tell he doesn't see you, that he doesn't care. And, wonder of wonders, I didn't die, and I was too chicken shit to take my own life. So I told myself at 10, I was like, all right, God, we're done. We're done. I don't believe in you anymore, because I just want this one thing. I don't want toys. I don't want Christmas. I don't even care if I grow up or not. And I stopped wanting to go to church, and my mom couldn't figure out why she was dragging me everywhere and why I was being such a shit to everybody. And one of the things that really embarrassing to talk about, as this progressed, I couldn't figure out why he was doing it. And the thing was, I must be doing something wrong. So I began hunting for implements around the house, screwdriver handles, certain hairbrush handles. And it was really hard to try to find out how to smuggle these things into my room. And clothespins, I would tack clothespins to myself, and it didn't feel good, but it kind of had the same level of pain as what my dad was doing. So I figured, okay, well, maybe this is right. And maybe if I get used to it and stop crying, then maybe it'll stop. And it never stopped the way I wanted it to. I didn't get better at it. I don't know any kid that's supposed to get better at this. And even when I'd look at the pictures or the videos, and they were all grown-ups, okay, no children, but he's just like, look how happy the women are. This is what they like to do. This is what grown-ups do. It's a special thing. And I wanted to be special, and I didn't want to be a bad girl. And I just thought that if I did it right once, then he would leave me alone. So I just kept hunting for other things to either tack onto myself or whatever. And I knew I couldn't tell anybody, because you're not supposed to be doing this to yourself. So it was just like, it was surrounding guilt and shame and fear, and you don't know what to do with it. So you just end up like hurting yourself. And that led years into it, where I could not understand that it could feel good. It was supposed to be scary and shameful, which led to a lot of bad partners, let me tell you that. But I also wound up getting huge crushes on male teachers, because they would tell you things and they'd be really nice, and they'd be nice to everyone, and they treated me like I was a real person. And I remember my 5th grade teacher, I loved him so much, because he would play John Denver songs on his guitar if it was too early to go to the bus stop or to get your parents picked up. And he would talk to everyone, and we had great times. And I remember wishing, it's like, maybe he would marry my mom, and then he could be my dad. And that happened a lot in junior high and high school too. I remember wishing, even though I knew it doesn't work like that, it's like, well, maybe he could be my dad. Because then I don't think he'd hurt me like this. And he's nice. He'd be nice to my mom. He'd be nice to my brother. He could be my father. And you don't tell the teachers this, because it sounds really weird and it sounds like you're ungrateful. but I used to worship the teachers because they were so nice, and they were always nice, and they were teaching the class, so they were always engaged. They would look at you. Anyone who looked right at me, I was just like, wow, this is so cool, you know? And it never seemed to make any difference, because every year you get another teacher and then they go away. But I'll always miss my fifth grade teacher, wherever he is, because he was the first one I wanted to be my father. You have something, Roland?
Yeah. So sorry. When I don't respond right away, it's because my mic is muted.
That's
But I
okay.
wanted to acknowledge Kathy Pop for showing up, and she checked in, and she wanted to say, Jeanette, thanks for keeping your promise. And we joined her on that sentiment. And I thank you for showing up, Kathy, because it's hard for people to show up to this. I mean, even the entire vision of what's going on, they think, well, I can't possibly show up more than twice or maybe three times to be able to support Trinette, because if I do, it sounds like I'm really into this concept or something. And you know what? I'll take the chance that that some viewers will be really into this concept, because the first thing is that we have to get people joining us in the chant that this is wrong. And there are plenty of issues in the field that institute the wrongdoing, and our society is conditioned not to recognize it and to ignore it. And I could get into that more, but anyway, I wanted to just acknowledge that Kathy was here, and thank you very much for showing. And you're standing up for our concept. You're standing up for the mission that Trinette has, and we appreciate you. So thank you very much.
Um, are you willing to read those statistics you found? I just need another minute, Roland. Are you able to
Yeah.
read those stats? Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll just talk for a while, and you interrupt me when you feel like it there.
Thank you.
But before I get to the statistics, I wanted to talk about a few things that you said today and review that. It brought some thoughts to my mind, and I'm fortunate that I'm not one of these fathers that would have really considered these things, because I didn't have to. I have got three lovely daughters, and you know, they love me, hopefully, and we have great relationships, and hopefully they're not having some kind of similar issues from somewhere. Who knows? And excuse me, but I wanted to reminisce about a few things that you said that brings to mind how we treat our kids as they're growing up. Okay, first of all, the syndrome that you described with your experience. One of the key things that I remember that just really shocked me was that your mother didn't know. So mothers oftentimes do not know. Mothers are very seldom the focal point of the abuse. It's it's got to be the fathers, right? I mean, I'm thinking the percentages are that it's more than likely the father.
Father or
So
stepfather, yeah.
father or stepfather, and mothers do not know what's going on. A lot of times they do not know. They're in denial. They have their own bad relationship, possibly with their husband, or their own issues. They're caught up in life, and they don't realize what's going on. And it's easy enough to be fooled on that ground level. So it's going on, and the mothers do not know. Another syndrome that you described was your dirty room. If parents find the room is dirty and the kids are resistant to cleaning, that's a red flag. I never thought about it or connected it to this concept, but that's you can't be the only child in North America who did what you did. So the dirty room syndrome, the poor health care and hygiene, and taking care of being messy, those are a syndrome of possibly more than what we're perceiving.
Loss
So
of faith. You know, that's another one, is the loss of faith. And she didn't know where it had come from.
yeah, but I mean that's even like when the kids get older and can really wrap their brains around the whole concept of faith. You know, before that, it's like they worship the mother and dad. They worship the parents. They worship elders. They're taught to do this. So a lot of times we discredit kids for what they say and do because kids so commonly act out, supposedly. And that's but why do they act out? Why don't we teach the kids how to be honest and truthful, regardless of what's going on? Because they have their perception and they're smarter than we give them credit for. We just don't want to make them embarrass us or themselves or be in some awkward situations. So we give the kids a whole list of you don't do this and you don't do that and you don't do that. And so we teach them how to build the box that they live in. And I'm not one for living in a box myself. I don't believe the box exists, but it does exist in that we psychologically build our boxes and limit ourselves. So these are the things that parents do to often inadvertently help the kids build the limits of their existence. So I just wanted to bring that up. Now, if you want me to go through the statistics, I will.
Maybe in a second. I've got my wind back again. And one of the things is that, my family does love me. And I remember my mom always said, no matter what, you can always come to me. If you have a problem, you can always talk to me. And I remember thinking, I can't talk about this. I can't because, you're not allowed to see movies that have sex in it. You're not supposed to see people naked. So as a kid, they try to teach you it's inappropriate. But what a kid understands is nudity is bad, sex is bad, and that's a very simple black and white, understanding that kids have is that it's bad. It just is. And I didn't want to tell her I'm doing this bad thing. And I want it to stop, but you're not supposed to ask another adult, make this adult stop. That the grown-ups are supposed to police themselves. You don't think of it like that. And, you're told, well, you can go up and talk to a police officer if you need help. And it's like, well, there was never any cop just staying around outside waiting for me to say help. Every time I saw a cop, he was busy and I was with like my mom or someone else. So it never was the perfect moment in my mind as a kid that a cop is just standing there doodling on a notepad, for me to come up and be like, can I talk to you? Because, I don't like this. It never clicks. It's never like that Hollywood Disney picture where, you're supposed to tell somebody. That never seems like the right time. And you're really afraid because you're involved in this, that you are just as bad as the abuser. If anything, you're worse. You are worse because, you didn't say stop. You didn't say I don't want to. And that adds to the guilt. And then all of a sudden you are as big a culprit and you don't know how it's ever going to end. And that is normal. You don't see it. There's ever going to be a way out. And as a kid, you don't picture yourself as a grown-up still going through this. You picture yourself as forever 10 years old, forever living at your parents'. Nobody ages. It's just, that is the understanding of hell that you're living right there. It is never going to get better. And I would be so angry. I didn't want to wear anything pretty, nothing pretty. I started wearing dirty clothes and mismatched socks and not brushing my hair. I was just trying to be as ugly as possible. It's like, get away from me. Everyone get away from me. Which is really hard if you still want friends, because they don't understand why you're dressing like a homeless person. But they accepted that. They thought it was weird, but they accepted that. I didn't want my ears pierced for years because I didn't want anything else pushing into me that could hurt. I didn't want anything else like that. I was 13 or 14 before I finally got my ears pierced. I couldn't. When I was 4, got an infection, so I didn't want any more pain. I couldn't. So I was the only little girl that had not pierced ears and dressed like a ragamuffin and, around a bunch of other kids. They made a lot of fun of me. And it's like, I didn't know what to say. I started being really tomboyish. And I remember my aunt, I think I was about 12. My aunt bought the most beautiful clothes for us, clothes we couldn't afford, okay? And I hated it because she would buy me the prettiest things and they were nice. She bought one Christmas, it was a silk pink blouse and a faux string of pearls and a satin embroidered vest and a green velvet skirt. And it looked so beautiful in the box. And I remember everyone got really awkwardly quiet because I was being an ungrateful jerk, and I'm like, thanks. I was obviously not grateful, and I did not handle it graciously, and I didn't show the approval and the appreciation that you're supposed to do if someone buys you a really freaking expensive, nice, thoughtful gift. And I remember hating it because I looked at it and it was so pretty and so clean. And I thought, I'm not supposed to wear this. There's no way that that's going to cover everything up. There's no way that this is going to fool everybody. And I would be angry. I was angry because I was like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of taking this, that no one would talk to me about it. And it's because they didn't know. And the one person that knew wasn't going to talk to me about it, because eventually I'd ask why. And he'd have to admit that, it's not supposed to happen, but I'm doing it anyway. And it happened so sporadically. It's not like every week or every day. It was just so... the light under the door at night, his shoes would stop. And then if he didn't keep walking to his bedroom, I knew that was going to be the night. And I had a choice of, was I going to pretend to be asleep and then maybe I could turn over and kind of pretend to, move away from him? Or do I stare at him? And staring at him was creepy because there was nothing there. There was nothing. And I couldn't figure, this could not be the same person. The same person that would look at me and laugh during cartoons and eat dinner with us and tell me that I had to finish my vegetables. This is not the same person. This was just someone that looked like my dad that would come in and do this. And it lends to the feeling of craziness, this surreal, this can't be happening to me. That always was going through my head, this is my dad, this cannot be happening to me. And I was just losing it. I was losing it, where anytime someone was nice to me, I clung to it, and then I would find ways to get as crazy or as rude as possible to make them leave. Because it's like, okay, well, if you're nice to me, are you going to start doing this? Because I don't want that. So anytime I would get close to anyone, family member, friend, whatever, I'd start telling lies, I'd start being nasty, I'd take their stuff, I'd break their stuff, and they couldn't figure out what the heck was going on, because you just spin through, it's like this, you feel absolutely insane. Because you go to gatherings, you go to family things, it's like, you're so pretty, you're so nice, you're so sweet, and you look at them like, I don't feel pretty, I'm not okay. But you learn to smile, because otherwise people think something's wrong with you. And it's like, yeah, I'm great, I'm fine. You don't want to go around telling everyone that your dad is a piece of crap for doing this, because then maybe you're a piece of crap. So like, my dad's great, I love my dad, I love my mom. And so you learn to just go completely nuts. And it's okay, because that's how you handle it. And I'm saying this is what kids do. Not all kids, but this is what kids do. It's like, okay, they're not going to apologize, so I'll apologize. I am sorry that I am so horrible that you feel that you have to do this, that you think I deserve this. So I must deserve it, because if I say I don't deserve it, then I'm an ungrateful jerk, and then I need to be punished more. And I don't want to tell anyone, because they're going to look at me and be like, you are a horrible kid. You really are, that this bad stuff has to happen to you. So you learn to apologize for things that are not your fault and were never your fault. And then you flip around, you get angry. You get angry. It's like, why is this my fault? What the hell have I done that justifies this? There is no justification. So then you start breaking things. You start being mean and rude, and you're being hateful, and everyone looks at you like, how do we help this kid? Why is she so angry? Why is she being so mean? What if you ask her why is she doing it? It's like, I don't know, because you don't know. Who the heck takes psychology at 10, 9, 5, 12? Who does that, And so you have these people being like, well, we want to help you, and you're angry all the time. You don't need to be angry. Nothing's going on. And you lose your mind. It's like something's going on, but you're telling me it's not going on. So then it's just like, I'm crazy. Everything that happened when they would try to help me, it just cemented that I am crazy. You have another thing.
Yes, we're being visited by Crystal Caputo. And thank you. I hope I pronounced your name right. Correct me.
Caputo.
Oh, so you know,
Yes.
as a friend of yours.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for showing up, and I appreciate it. And your comment here, I heard that he hopes nothing could hurt her daughters. The best thing, the best thing to do, ask questions. I'm not thoroughly understanding your statement, but I know what you're getting at, and the concept of asking questions. Kids want to be honest, and if you ask them, you're going to divulge some certain things that come through. Weirdness in the answer, or maybe the truth, or something. But to ask questions is a really, really a good idea, and don't take that couldn't happen as a possible answer. And so, if you get a happy no, no, that's great. But at least we can ask and find out, and give the kids a chance to have a voice. And also, Kathy Pop was mentioning, and I can't display the whole statement, but I'll read as much as I can here. Years ago, my son told me about his sitter's husband touching another kid. I always felt, and I still do, that it happened to him as well, but he has always denied it. I reported it, and unfortunately, the guy was found not guilty at his trial, which was a big slap to his face. And that's going to happen time and time again. It's very, very hard to prove child abuse. It's amazing how much long-lasting emotional damage this creates. Acknowledging that it happened and that it wasn't their fault is a very important step to healing. It's so hard for so many people to take that first step. And one of the points that we have to make at this point is the statistics show that 1 in 20 boys have gone through some kind of abuse or molestation. I think it's much greater than that.
Yeah.
And they say that 1 out of 5 girls has. Well, if the whole syndrome holds true, then it's probably much greater than that too. What if it's 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 3? What are the odds that your own child has suffered some kind of thing like this from somebody? So when you look at the statistics, they mean a lot more than the percentages that we get to entertain. And we need to be conscious of this and be conscious of what's happening around our kids and to our kids in environments and the laminations of teachers, friends, babysitters, etc. We have to keep attention to these things.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for chiming in. I appreciate your feedback.
I know that we're probably getting close to wrapping up, and I just wanted to say a few things. Thank you, Roland, for giving me those statistics and for giving everyone else watching it. It is higher because that's just what was reported. And one of the biggest fears from a survivor is retaliation, ostracism, judgment, because it's such a horrible discussion topic that a lot of people don't even want to touch on it because they don't want it anywhere near their family, which is good. You don't want it to happen to your family or anyone. And it's such a scary thought that it could be happening or has happened to your family. It's almost like people don't want to acknowledge it because it's like, do not look right at it. And I'll get you in a second, Roland. I know you popped something else up, but I just, I wanted to say that you are, as a survivor, you are deathly afraid that if you say anything, that there will be no justice. And by the time, if ever you ever get a voice, it's too late for justice. The statute of limitations disappears. There's no physical evidence, Records have been scrubbed because, it's been so many years or decades. So by the time you finally have a voice, it's just he said, she said. That's it. That's all you have. There is no concrete closure in the normal sense of closure, because these people do not apologize. And what is so scary, not trying to start like this riot of fear or anything, but what is so scary is these people who abuse children. They are normally touted as pillars of the community, always helpful, wouldn't hurt a fly. Okay, and that doesn't mean that people who are thought of like that are abusers. Okay, but even look at things that have reached the news, ministers or people who have helped out at certain event functions, they're deacons or they always, it always seems to be somebody that is like, whoa, that person? No way that person, and it's like, how do you fight that? How do you fight where they have learned how to project this image to other people of a likable, gentle, loving person, maybe a little quirky, okay? How do you fight that? And as a victim or as a survivor, you automatically assume you can't, because you're trying to tarnish the name of somebody that everyone says is an upstanding citizen. And so how loud do you have to scream? Do you have to immediately show the marks, show the bleeding, show whatever? And then when it's past that time, what proof do you have except the fact that you are going through therapy or you need it desperately? That there's always that fear of, who's going to listen to me? And that's something that even now people are admitting it, but they're just like, I can't tell anybody. I don't blame a lot of people for waiting until their abuser's dead, because then there's not someone wandering around going, oh, she's lying, he's lying, they need help and I want to help them, but they won't talk to me. And they come across as very concerned and caring, but really they're just worried about what everyone else is thinking about them, because they're sociopaths and or narcissists. That person's pain isn't real. Even now, my father just doesn't think I have a right to speak out about this. He thinks I'm exaggerating. And it's like, okay, well, bully for you that you can go to sleep at night and not have nightmares, bully for you that you don't remember this stuff. I'm sorry that it took so long for my brain to finally start clicking and piecing it all together. But to question my sanity after I did for 20 years, you can kind of go pound sand. That this isn't about you. This is about me. What's this, Roland?
Okay, I'm going to take these in reverse order because Kathy's got a great comment that she makes a question for you. And Crystal says, too many parents just ignore it. Asking your child is something that gives them a chance to say something. As kids, you just don't volunteer things like that.
Correct.
And that is correct. And Kathy echoes, my son did many of the same things. In other words, some of the acting out and misbehavior, I think that you described, and correct me if I misinterpret that, Kathy. I felt I knew the reason behind it, but he would never open up to me or anyone. Would you have given the opportunity? In other words, would you have responded and answered given the opportunity? And then I have a statement by your husband, Steve, afterwards. So, but anyway, the question.
With what I have, I think at that point, if my mom had said, did your father do anything to you, or if anyone in the family, I would have been terrified to say yes. Because if it's someone you care about, even part of the time, you also feel the need to protect them, to defend them. Kind of like when your friend's being a jerk and you still but they're still my friend. They're not always bad all the time. You rationalize it's not all bad. I'm still alive. I still have food. I still have friends. You start listing all your blessings. I don't know. I think she would have had to really, really dig, which then at that point you're afraid of putting ideas into their head. If you ask your kid every week if they've been molested or something, then you start to wonder, am I coaching them to the correct answer? And as a parent, I'm so sorry, because there's a very real possibility that even if you ask your kid, they may be so ashamed. They may be so ashamed, kind of like a kid's afraid to tell you they broke something, so they hide it. This is something where you fear more retribution, you fear more retaliation, you fear more judgment. And with an immature psyche, you try to avoid it. I honestly don't think I would have told my mom, even if she had asked me, because you don't want her to get in trouble. You don't want her to die or to go to jail. And also, if you've ever remembered ever being afraid to talk about a nightmare or a horrible thought like what if, you are really afraid, if you think you're crazy, you're afraid that talking about it makes the monsters real. So basically, my best answer is, when that person is ready to acknowledge it, and it may be months, weeks, or years, that is when it happens. And I wish there was a magical switch. Some people finally crack under questioning and they're able to admit it, and other people will deny it maybe forever. And I wish that wasn't the case, because as long as you tie yourself with the actions, with the abuse, with the abuser, and you feel, a part of you feels like you owe them your silence, you owe them your obedience, because in a position where they have authority over you. You feel like you owe it to them to do that. And it's not until later that you realize that you don't owe them jack.
So I got to jump in. You mentioned something, first of all, a little while ago that really rang a bell in my thinking, and that is you said the phrase crack under questioning, which brings to light certain things. And then when kids are approached on the subject, it's going to be really, really, and I can't stress that enough, really difficult for them to explain what really happened, or even rationalize in their mind that it's okay to do so. They're going to be hesitant to bring it up because if they think they're going to get somebody else in trouble, and then people are going to get them in trouble as a result of that. And that's just a misnomer that is inbred into the child, just trying to keep out of trouble. So we're teaching our kids this. Why do we teach kids to rationalize and to hide or to lie, as opposed to just blatantly tell the truth whenever the truth is asked for? And that's a syndrome of the American society and probably of the world. But it's something to be considering. We don't teach our kids to be truthful regardless of what's happening. And that's something that I've strived for. And no doubt I probably didn't do as good a job as I intended, but that's what we strive for, or at least supposedly, theoretically, that's what we strive for. So that cracking under questioning is just a huge statement regarding the child's personality and what they're thinking and the honesty that comes out of them, even when confronted with the issue and asked. We have to realize that they may not crack under questioning. So that's just a huge point. And, part of our responsibility in this program, this HOA series, Jeanette, and part of your mission is to bring the responsibility issues forward and bring the surrounding issues into the light so they can be examined. And one thing that we mentioned, and it's never been pinned, but I'm a father, so I'm going to pin it. And that is the concept of a father's anger. And a father should, as far as I'm concerned, a father should never be angry. I had a father that was so angry that I couldn't even explain myself if I got in trouble. I had to just take his punishment, and that's the way it was. And what's wrong with you? And what were you thinking? And et cetera. The typical dialogue that comes from a father to the child. But in the cases regarding child abuse, and probably in many, many other cases too, a father's anger to the child during the process could be identified as guilt. And especially when you describe the situations where it's one-on-one, a father to a daughter or a father to a son or something like that. And if there's anger to the child during the sequence, but it wasn't in response to something that the child did aside from the interaction, if the father leaves and is angry, that's because he's feeling guilty for what he has done or said or something like that. And guilt often incurs anger. They are connected psychologically and physiologically. And so if you see anger, or if you reported anger, or if you're experiencing anger with a spouse or something, consider that there's more going on than just they're mad for the moment or work is tough or something like that. Oftentimes guilt is involved. So it's something to be examined. And, I've got Stephen's statement here. I wanted to read this off because he deserves to be heard. And thank you very much, Stephen, for joining us. I appreciate you coming in. So here is what he says. He's coming to Kathy Pop. That first step is incredibly hard to take. And I think the only way to help someone in this to take it is to ask the hard question, because dancing around the subject is only gives opportunities for the child to avoid it as well. So, yeah, ask the hard question. and repeat the hard question and consider it, and don't necessarily take the child's first response or second or third as gospel. So I really appreciate what you're saying there, and thank you, Steve. Um, he was following up on the rest of what he was saying there about, but like what Trinette is saying. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not getting it all. My posts are like jumping around here because everyone's posting more stuff. But I know Trinette. I have a lot of difficulties. Trinette and I have a lot of difficulty screening sitters for Samantha because with her mostly non-verbal interaction, it's like a living nightmare for us. Because if something happened, we wonder how she would explain it to us.
She's the
So
perfect victim.
God, my God, the perfect victim. So, vetting babysitters is a really important thing because we're not limited to parents on this, and we're not limited to stepfathers, and we're not limited to close friends. We bring people in to babysit our kids. Obviously that's a part of American society and probably
Hmm.
society all over the world. So it's a common thing, and it's bound to be more prevalent as an issue than we think.
I know that this sounds like we're trying to stir up a lot of fear, and it's not like I'm trying to say every babysitter might be a child molester or every parent, because even as a kid you're taught, you can trust these people because you're supposed to be able to. You can't go to your kid and be like, did anyone touch you, including your father, because that might make the kid be terrified of the father, you know even if there's no reason for it. So it's very hard because they're not playing by the rules. They're using the rules that we have wrought for our children to trust the adults because they're supposed to be able to, and they are wolves in sheep's clothing running around portraying decent people, and we're trying to protect our children. And it's terrifying because it's like, okay, I don't want every babysitter looked at with suspicion. I don't want every father to have to undergo like hours of scrutiny. I just, people need to understand that this exists. And if your child is exhibiting classic signs like lack of faith, loss of interest in things they used to love, hygiene problems, all of a sudden explosive defiance and other things, theft, whatever, these are signs that something else is wrong, and they are trying to say something, but they don't know how to ask for help. They may not even realize that they deserve help, because there comes a point where you are so ashamed for not saying no. I remember hating myself that I didn't kick him once, just once, or scream at him or hit him, or take it in my hands and break it or something. I didn't have the courage to do that. So you think, okay, well, you know what? It's gone on this long. If I didn't say no, I must have wanted it. And my brother had an interesting statement. It's like, this is a rapist mentality, that unless both parties explicitly say no, consent is implied. And the abusers will take lack of a denial as consent. I'm telling you that right now. Okay, so even if you didn't say no, it's not your fault because they knew better. Because if they didn't know better, they would have told everybody what they did. So they let that very vague fear and confusion work for them. And that's how they got away with it.
There's a great conversation going on the side, and Stephen and Kathy are both exchanging some great stuff. But regarding the experience that Kathy was explaining, she says, since it was a family member, my son it was my son feeling shameful. Since the guy was arrested, there was plenty of opportunity to open up in the lines of conversation, but he wouldn't. His age at the time was 4, almost 5. It's horrible that the abusers get all the power. And that is exactly our point and issue, and the reason that we're having this hangout series, Kathy, because the unspoken hero is the person who will speak out, and in this case it's Trinette, and she's bringing it to light. She's talking about an extremely hard subject, but hopefully this is going to resonate with some people, and they're going to take another look at this subject. and we're going to end up being able to help some people someplace, and hopefully with more and more people like yourselves get involved, our voice gets stronger, the message gets extended out there, and we help even more people. So thank you very much for your contributions. And I know that we're almost at the wrap up point. This conversation all obviously can go on, but
Yeah.
we've covered a lot of really important things, and I hope you'll look at the replay. And thank you very much. And I guess I'll hand it back to you to wrap it up, Jeanette.
Okay. I'm going to make it really quick. Thank you. Let me unwhite box you there. I'm going to make it really quick, and I appreciate anyone who watches this either live or later, even if it's only for a few minutes. My biggest thing is this is not about attention. This is not, I don't want necessarily, I'm not looking for sympathy or whatever. This is basically, if almost everyone in the world agrees that this is a horrible thing that does happen, okay, maybe it didn't happen to you, but we can agree that this is probably one of the worst things that can happen to someone. Why does no one want to talk about it? We'll talk about genocide. We'll talk about political intrigue. We'll talk about alcoholism. We'll talk about cancer. We'll talk about HIV. No one wants to talk about this, okay? And that's why it's still going on, is because everyone's afraid to look at something so ugly that it's running unchecked. It is running unchecked, and then you have people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s finally coming out and saying, this is what's going on. And they don't know until that time all these things they've done in their lives, that they have tried to sabotage their own self-worth, because that is the lesson they carried. So, you know, this offends people. It makes them uncomfortable. Some people think that I'm just reaching out for attention. You know, honestly, I don't really care if you think that. That's fine. If you don't like it, don't watch it. But I'm tired of this being something that no one can look at, no one can talk to anyone about this. As long as it becomes something that everyone goes, oh, let's table that for another time. That is why the predators are winning. That is why now at 34, I'm finally realizing I have every right to be angry that someone who was supposed to protect me did not. And I no longer need to feel shame. They're the person that's supposed to feel shame. And if they won't, I don't need to carry that. So we're going to end this now, because I know we're going a little bit over time, but I'll go into after 13 in my next session. And I'm hoping that someone similar will realize that maybe some of the things they did, this is their way of acting out. This is the way of crying out for help. And they never knew it. They just thought that they were crazy. And I'm telling you right now, you're not. It's just something no one was ever supposed to have to deal with. And you dealt with it. So Roland, thank you for helping me with this session. And anyone who was watching, I appreciate this. And we're going to sign off now, and I'll see you in another week. All right, bye.